Alright guys, welcome to the Illegal Shift NFL podcast. Yeah, I told you, we're rebranding, and we have done it yet again, but for the last time. Now, this is going to be our draft preview special. This is going up hopefully early-ish Thursday morning, or at least before lunch. There's a lot of mock drafts out there. I've done my own if you go to illegalshiftnfl.com. Mine wasn't very helpful, I don't think. Especially when you consider that I have the Cleveland Browns taking LeBron James with their first pick. So there have been a ton of draft analysis and mock drafts and just people generally trying to figure out what team is going to take what. There's a lot of rumors. Who's going to fall? Who's going to be a big reach? There's a lot of questions going into this. But I'm going to do this. I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff. There's plenty of people who can do it way better than I can. I will be doing a live draft blog tonight. That should be up. By the time you're seeing this, I'll at least have the page set up, which will be at illegalshiftnfl.com/2015 NFL Draft. And that should also be, there'll be a link there. I will set up a Tumblr page, and I think that's where it will go to, and then from there, go on to the website itself. I feel like that's the most efficient way. So I'm not going to go through and look at all the prospects and figure out who's going where. I mean, where do I think Todd Gurley's going to go? Who knows? There's so many teams that need a running back, but how many of them value it? The Chargers need a running back. They haven't valued it since LT left town. There's just a ton. He'll probably go someplace in that late first round where you have the Cardinals and the Cowboys looking for the starting running back, unless you actually believe the Cowboys, and I don't. So I have 5 burning NFL draft questions that I would like to ask and I would like to discuss, and obviously I would like to know what you guys think on these subjects as well. And be sure, any questions that I have, whether it's a question of the day, whether it's one of these questions that you have an answer to, any responses, either leave it down in the comments in YouTube or send it to me on Twitter at JellybeanSniper. Now, the first question, and this has been the big one that's going on with raging debate, is who will take Marcus Mariota? He's the number 2 ranked quarterback in this class. On the field, anyways. Off the field, he's the number 1 rated guy over Jameis Winston. It seems like pretty much a lock for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to take Jameis Winston with the first overall pick. I think it would be fun to see that monkey wrench thrown in, though, with Mariota going to the Buccaneers. I think that would be amusing, but realistically, Winston is going number 1 overall, even though the Buccaneers have come out and said they're not going to tell him until they're on the clock. Or tell whoever they're taking with that first overall pick. Now, this could be interesting because I remember back in the 2005 draft, everyone knew that the Houston Texans were taking Reggie Bush number 1 overall, and they took Mario Williams instead. And I'd say that worked out pretty well. Both are still in the league, but Mario Williams is a Pro Bowler, and Reggie Bush is just kind of a neat little weapon to have on the side. So who will take Marcus Mariota? Most people, myself included, are convinced he's going number 2 overall. We just don't know who's going to be there. The biggest rumor that's been going around is Phillip Rivers to the Titans in exchange for that number 2 pick to get Mariota. This obviously stems from Phillip Rivers doesn't want to play in Los Angeles if that is indeed where they go, and he would rather retire than take the franchise tag money. I think the Chargers are going to try and move him. Hopefully, obviously they would want to go and get his replacement, but if not, maybe they're one of those teams, if they can't get their hands on Mariota, maybe they grab like Bryce Petty or something in the 2nd or 3rd round. Even 4th. I'm not sure. That'll be another question we get to in a little bit. But that's the popular one. That seems like where it's going. But as we all know, if we think we know what's going to happen in the draft, that's not what's going to happen. Especially not in this offseason where everything's been crazy. You look, there's constant trade rumors. Martellus Bennett apparently is on the block for the Bears, the tight end, which is, I don't know why you would do that. The Cleveland Browns are apparently trying to deal for number 2 to get Mariota. There's all sorts of things going on that are rumors. I don't know if the Browns make that trade. They obviously have the best immediate assets, but I don't think they make that trade at the end of the day. Something doesn't seem right. Like, I understand You can look at Johnny Manziel and say he's a bust, he's this and that. He only played in 2 games. I understand the off-field stuff, but let the guy recover. Michael Irvin had off-field issues. Not LaDainian. Lawrence Taylor had off-field issues. All of these guys, like, there are tons of players who have had off-field issues, overcome them, and managed to do much better in their career. Chris Carter got kicked off the Eagles for all sorts of off-the-field issues, comes back with the Vikings and makes himself into a Hall of Famer. You can't give up on a guy after 2 games. As much as it doesn't seem like he'll grow up and he seems like... Everyone just wants to hate on the rich white kid. And I understand that. And trust me, I'm not exactly a Manziel fan. As a Bills fan, a team without a quarterback, I would much rather go into the season with Matt Castle and E.J. Manuel than Johnny Manziel. And that's pretty bad considering who I just was talking about. So I don't think the Browns are in play. I don't think the Bears are in play as much as they would love to be there. The Saints, I feel like that sort of came and went. I don't think they're going to move on from Drew Brees just yet. That would help the Titans out way more than it would help getting Phillip Rivers, just because Phillip Rivers is a little bit younger, but Drew Brees is still a better quarterback. So, I maybe the Saints, if we're going off odd circumstances that could come up, yeah, I think the Saints could trade up there and go for it. I don't think it's going to happen. I do think the Titans are the most likely scenario. I don't see the Jets moving up. I think they will make an offer, but I don't think they have enough to get up there. And I do not see the Eagles moving up. As much as everyone likes that story, I don't think they go up for Mariota. It's in play, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, maybe if they could flip Sam Bradford for like the number 12 picks from the Browns and then send them, plus apparently their, young middle linebacker, who I just forgot his name, he allegedly could be on the block. So maybe they throw him in the package as well. I think there is a scenario in which the Eagles could get up there without having to give up everything. But I don't know if that's realistic. I think they might just try and go with the Sam Bradford, Mark Sanchez combination. That is one team, though, with Sam Bradford at starting quarterback. Tim Tebow is not a big signing, but that third quarterback spot will be relevant, or potentially could be relevant for the Eagles. So don't just throw it out and say, oh, Tebow's not going to get any time. If he wins that third quarterback spot, you might see some Tebow time this upcoming season. But moving on from that, my next burning question would be, we touched on it a little bit already, will Phillip Rivers or Adrian Peterson be traded throughout this draft process? If Phillip Rivers is going to be traded, he's going to be traded early in the day. He's going to be traded early in round 1. You figure if they don't trade him for pick number 2, and that's where Mariota goes, they're just not going to trade him at all. So I think we'll get our answer really quickly on Phillip Rivers. As much as he says he's not going to re-sign, I don't see them trading him and just having nothing on the roster this year. I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. I don't think Phillip Rivers has missed a start in forever. So, let me look that up right now. I know it was Billy Volek for a little while. That's how long ago I had to know who their backup quarterback is. Am I wrong in assuming that he hasn't missed a start in quite a while, if ever? He had Kellen Clemens. That's their backup quarterback. It's Kellen Clemens. So, yeah, he has never missed a start. Although 2005, maybe he did. Maybe he missed 2005. I don't know what happened back then. But since 2006, he has not missed a start, which is impressive for a guy who tore his ACL in the playoffs at one point. So, I can't imagine they give up on him for a second or third round pick and move on with Kellen Clemens. Not unless they, again, if they get their hands on like a Bryce Petty or one of the other quarterbacks, like that second tier quarterback class. Like if they think that they can get one of them and that will be what solves all their issues. Like if they think they can get him through a full season or two. But I don't, if he doesn't go for the number 2 pick to Tennessee or anywhere, if he doesn't get traded by the time that Marcus Mariota is drafted, he's not going anywhere. You will see San Diego with Phillip Rivers again next season. As far as Adrian Peterson goes, I would like to see him traded. I would like to see him go to the Arizona Cardinals because I think he could really help them out and get them up in the Super Bowl contender territory. But I don't know if that's going to happen because I feel like they are overvaluing the Vikings, that is. They are overvaluing a 30-year-old running back. Now, I think Adrian Peterson can play and play well until he's 33, 34, 35. I think he'll have the old school longevity because he seems to be built that way. But I'm not banking on that. And I think at this point, for a 3 or 4 year lease on a running back who he's going to be making $12 million next year. I don't see them getting more than a second round pick out of him for what could essentially be a 1-year loaner. And I think if the Cardinals don't get their hands on either Todd Gurley or Melvin Gordon, then I think they will probably offer a second round pick at least to go and try and get Peterson from the Vikings. I don't see any way where the Cowboys can do that. I don't see where the Cowboys could trade and get Adrian Peterson because they don't have that kind of cap room right now. So I do think they're out of it just for cap restraints. I think their interest is high, but I don't think they have the ability to sign him. So I think that's the only possible landing spot. You can throw out Oakland and Jacksonville and all those kind of people. And I'm sure the Vikings would probably be more likely to consider, say, the number 33 or 35 overall pick 34 or 35, which is where the Bucks and Raiders pick. 36 is the Jaguars. So if they wanted to trade to one of them and they knew they were only getting a second round pick, I mean, those would be the highest graded guys, but I don't see them being serious contenders. And if any of them trade a second round pick for him, they're out of their minds because he's just going to leave at the end of the year anyways. So, Rivers, I feel like he'll get traded. I feel like that number 2 pick for Phillip Rivers, I think that's going to happen. It seems like, well, I think there's more than a 50% chance that happens because I think if Ken Wisenhunt has his say, he will definitely go for it. And I don't think Peterson gets traded. And I don't know that he sticks to his word. I'm sure if he doesn't get traded, I think he'll suit up for Minnesota next year. And that could be a dangerously good young team, having that high caliber of a running back there. Or he could completely just, be a 30-year-old running back, hit that wall, and that's the end of him. The next question, and this has been coming up more recently. I mean, we had some guys with questionable character. Everyone talked about Jameis Winston, Dorial Green-Beckham, and we'll get to Green-Beckham in a second, but now we have Shane Ray, the defensive end from Missouri, and we have Randy Gregory, is he a linebacker from Nebraska? No, he's a D-end as well. The 2 pass rushers, both of which got in trouble with marijuana. Randy Gregory failed his drug test at the Combine, and now this week, Monday, like the week of the draft, Shane Ray gets arrested for possession of marijuana. I don't know why you would do something so stupid leading up to the draft, and that would raise question marks for me about how seriously you're taking this. And I think that will hit their draft stock. But my question, of course, is how much will that affect their draft status? How far could they fall, will they fall, or won't they fall? I think Randy Gregory, the slide started a while ago, but I think there is some interest in that middle area with like New Orleans. I maybe not the Texans, the Chargers maybe, then especially when you hit the Bengals at 21, you have some teams that are really in need of pass rushers. I don't see either of these guys getting out of the first round because I think the Cowboys at the bottom end, they definitely could use some pass rushing help. The Broncos need to stockpile younger talent on that defense. Colts, the Saints again at 31. So I don't see either of these guys falling out of the first round despite what some people may be saying. Now, do I think any of them are going in the top 10 anymore? I don't. I think this has affected their draft stock. I think there's enough talent up top, and the pass rushers, I mean, you can see a guy in one mock draft who's going, number 5 overall, and in another mock draft he's going at number 18, and a lot of that is just based on draft boards. We've got a lot of good pass rushers and wide receivers. The wide receivers seems like 1 and 2 in an argument, and then from there it's sort of pretty consistent as to where the rest of the list goes, but the pass rushers are all over the place. So I'm looking at this Mel Kiper and Todd McShay mock draft. I see Bud Dupree here at number 8. But I've also seen Mel Kiper Jr. Todd McShay take Bud Dupree, and I think had him go like number 22. Or somewhere in that mid to late first round range. It's not a matter of anyone's draft stock is rising or falling. They're all really talented. There's a lot of it's just a matter of scheme fit and just who you have higher on your board. So I think in a draft full of pass rushers, some top end pass rushers, I think it's easy for Shane Ray and Randy Gregory to fall. But I think once you hit that late first round, especially, they will outshine any other prospects and someone will take a risk on them. The Cowboys, for sure, they're definitely a team that will take a risk. And I do think, especially if he gets somewhere like the Patriots, I don't think they would take either of these players. I don't know if it's a need, but if they felt like the value was high, they don't care about character concerns. It's those teams you can't take a guy in the early first round, because that's usually associated with a team that has a questionable track record, and they don't have the infrastructure to deal with the backlash of that kind of pick. But someone like the Colts, someone like the Bengals, some of these teams have built up over the years, and they can take them. The Baltimore Ravens, the Cowboys. These kind of franchises can take the risk on a low character or a questionable character guy like that. So I think they do fall, but I don't think they necessarily fall that far. And you can look at some mock drafts, and maybe they don't fall at all. Maybe they were already projected to be mid to late first round guys anyways, and not top 10. So, going from those guys, the next question would be, who gambles on Dorial Green-Beckham? He's had a ton of off-the-field issues. It's a big storyline going into the draft. Again, this mock draft I'm looking at here is saying number 64, Dorial Green-Beckham goes to the Patriots. I feel like that would be a good landing spot for him. But it's not a matter of who gambles on Green-Beckham. It's a matter of, again, it's the draft board and its value. Like, where can you take him? I don't think anybody's taking him in the top 15. I think there's many other wide receiver prospects. So even if 4 or 5 go in the first 20 picks, none of them have to be Green-Beckham. There's other talented guys there. But I think when you get anywhere from that late first round all the way to the mid-third round, I think that's the area where he could go. You have a team who maybe would take a risk on him. How funny would it be if it was the Cowboys grabbing him and just having 2 head cases at wide receiver? But it could go... He could go anywhere in that range. He could go anywhere in the second round because I think he would be worth the gamble anyways, although you've got certain teams where your second round pick is basically another first, and you need to hit on another starter. You can't take a gamble. And in the early third, I think at that point he is a good upside pick, good value pick. It doesn't matter what team you are, they will take a risk on him. And I don't think it's necessarily a gamble. We saw this with Randy Moss. It was pretty much the exact same situation. A lot of off-field issues, comes out, goes to the Vikings. towards the end of his Vikings tenure, he sort of wore out his welcome and went ridiculous. Literally took off his entire Oakland tenure. He wasn't running routes. He was sort of lightly jogging down the field. It was painful to watch. And then he goes to the Patriots, and boom, now he's a Hall of Famer. It sort of ended. He stayed maybe a season too long. Nobody knew it going into the season, but he gets traded from the Patriots, and that's pretty much... He bounces to the Vikings, to the Titans, to one final season in San Francisco where he was a contributor, but I think he only got a couple of touchdown passes that season. So, he sort of went out quietly, but he put together a Hall of Fame career, and I don't think that Green Beckham is a surefire Hall of Famer, because I don't think he has all the intangibles that Randy Moss had, but there is a precedent to take a risk on that guy because it could turn out well. It might work out for you. And I think a team is definitely going to do that. And I don't think... He's not going to fall to the 4th round, the 5th round. He'll definitely... If I had to put money on it, I'd definitely say somewhere in the 2nd round is where he would go. Because I think at that point, his talent outweighs most of the prospects you're going to see at that point. And now my final question would be, where do these 2nd-tier guys go? And by second, I don't necessarily mean that these guys are bad quarterbacks, but there's clear separation between the first 2 quarterbacks in Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, and then the next 3, Garrett Grayson, Bryce Petty, and Brett Hundley. There's a huge separation there. Some mock drafts have Bryce Petty going early to mid-2nd round. The Bills are pretty popular with grabbing the next quarterback off the board with their number 2 overall pick. I've seen these guys going, not any of them going until the 3rd round or the 4th round. So you're talking about the first 2 picks to be quarterbacks and not another quarterback taken until the early 4th round. That's a realistic possibility, and that's scary because I don't know how bad these guys are going to be. Now, again, it's all a matter of these guys might have an advantage because, like Marcus Mariota, everyone keeps saying he needs some time to sort of adjust. And whether or not that's true, we won't know that for a few years. Maybe Jameis Winston is one who needs time to adjust, and Marcus Mariota can come in day 1 and be perfectly fine. We're not going to know until it happens. But in the case of Hundley, Grayson, and Petty, these guys most likely are coming into scenarios where they can sit and wait a season and sort of develop, and then maybe year 2 or year 3 come in and start. And I think that's what all these guys need. So don't sleep on any of these prospects. But I do think there could be a fall. But I could also see a scenario in round 3 where all 3 of these guys are taken within 10 picks of each other. I could see the Jets taking a risk. You can see someone... Now let me pull up this actual draft order because I might be fudging the numbers a little bit. But I think the Jets... You've got teams like the Jets, like the Bills, who feel like they're only a quarterback away from really being contenders. You've got the Texans in that same scenario. You got the Jets at 70, the Bears at 71, Rams at 72, Giants at 74, New Orleans at 75. You got the Browns at 77, New Orleans again at 78, Chiefs at 80, Bills at 81, Texans at 82, Chargers at 83. I mean, and the Arizona Cardinals at 86. In that 3rd round, I could see any of those teams, like I could see the run in those 16 picks where all 3 of those guys are off the board, if they're all still there in the 3rd round. Because quarterback is an overvalued position for a reason. It's the most important position on the field. So I could see some of these teams overvaluing them and knowing that they can develop them. Where a situation like Buffalo or the Jets, they might be able to start in their first season, but even then, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a decent stopgap, but for the New York Jets, the fans will clamor too much. You could hear the "We Want Grayson" chant starting as soon as week 3, when they go 0-3 and the fans just lose their minds. In Buffalo, there's a couple of, Matt Castle, he might be able to hold down the fort for a season or, maybe. We don't know what we're getting out of E.J. Manuel. Maybe they could revive his career there under new leadership. Who knows? I'm not holding my breath on that one, but those are two teams where he could start right away. I think with the Texans, he could have a chance at sitting on the bench between Mallett and Hoyer. I think those guys are definitely year-long stopgap guys, but I think going in that range, New Orleans, you grab them, you develop them behind Drew Brees for a year or two. The Chargers, if you are convinced that Phillip Rivers is leaving town next year and you don't get to trade him, then you grab one of those guys. Maybe you grab Brett Hundley, move the offense in a different direction, and just let him sit. So he's a local kid there too. He wouldn't have any problem moving to LA. So I do think that those guys will be drafted. I don't think any of them fall to the 4th round. I think all of them are gone by pick 86. If I had to take a wild guess, I would say that's where they would go. But those are my 5 burning questions. So quick recap for you. Who will take Marcus Mariota? I think it'll be the Chargers. I think they'll trade up for that pick. Will Rivers or Peterson be traded? Yes, I think Rivers will be a Titan. I think Peterson, depending on how stubborn the Vikings are, I think he's still going to be in Minnesota. But I'd like to see him get traded. How far will Shane Ray and Randy Gregory fall in the draft due to their off-field concerns? I don't think they leave the 1st round, but it might be cutting it close. Who gambles on Green Beckham? Again, I don't think he makes it out of the 2nd round, but after that, anyone within the first 10 picks of the 3rd round, I think they'll take a risk on him. And how will the 2nd-tier quarterbacks fare? I say, worst case scenario, there's a run in the 3rd round on these guys. I don't think any of them make it past Arizona at 86, if I had to take a guess. So, yeah, those are my questions that I have for tonight's draft. And let me know what you guys think, like what your opinions are on these questions. Where do you think these guys are going to go? Who do you think is the most likely candidate for just an off-the-wall trade, too? I mean, this has been such a ridiculous offseason so far that I do think there's any possibility that anybody in the league could be traded. If Tom Brady is traded for the number 1 overall pick, I wouldn't be shocked at this point. It's been that ridiculous. But also, my question of the day, on top of my other questions here, is how much would you be willing to give up, whether it's players or draft picks or what have you, in order to trade up and select the potential franchise quarterback? So again, how much would you be willing to give up? If you're the Eagles and you really think Marcus Mariota is going to be the difference maker for your franchise, how much do you give up to the Titans in order to take him? Do you give them your 1, your 2, Sam Bradford, next year's 1 and 2? Or would you rather just not sacrifice anything because there's a chance he could be a bust? Now again, there are years where you have Andrew Luck coming out and you know he's a sure thing. So obviously, especially in retrospect, if, my team or any team had given up 5 first-round picks to go up and get Andrew Luck, I'd be okay with that. Because as we've seen out of the Colts, those are all near the bottom of the 1st round anyway, so they might as well be 2nd-round picks. So it's but I don't think Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston, depending on where the Buccaneers go, I don't think either of these guys are surefire bets to be franchise quarterbacks. But I do think there are going to be some busts in this. I don't think both of the quarterbacks are going to be a bust. But if any season had that potential, this seems like both of these guys have bust potential in one way or another. With Jameis Winston, it's the off-the-field stuff. With Marcus Mariota, we saw how well Joey Harrington went. I still don't trust Oregon quarterbacks. So it's just a matter of getting these guys in the right system for what they are able to do. Again, Marcus Mariota would look really good in a Bills uniform because you saw what Greg Roman did with Colin Kaepernick. So with a mobile quarterback like that, obviously that's a good system. Sending him just anywhere where they're going to run the spread. Obviously Philadelphia is a big one. Potentially even the Redskins if they want to go back to running that zone read. I mean, it's not going to happen, but the Seahawks. Like any team that values a mobile quarterback and can work that in and actually work it in, not just say they want to. Again, the 49ers, if they were... I'm just throwing out teams. I'm not saying these are teams who are going to go get him. Those are systems that they could fit him in, but if you want to send him to a team and make him be a pocket quarterback, I don't think, number one, you're utilizing him properly, and number two, that's what he can provide you. So, everyone can bust, but I think a lot of that can fall down on... It's either going to fall down to their work ethic, their injuries, or just if they go to the right team. Everyone keeps saying how Amari Cooper, Leonard Williams, those are safe picks, and that if the Raiders have their choice between one of the two, they're finding someone who's going to help their franchise for the next 10 years. But we've seen with the Raiders, obviously Khalil Mack turned out good last year, but they've drafted some guys. Everyone said the same thing about Jamarcus Russell. Where is that guy now? Not in the NFL, that's for sure. You can take these guys. Kevin White, the wide receiver, there's a lot of debate between him and Amari Cooper. Kevin White needs time to develop. You can't just slap him on a team without a quarterback. If the Titans... Let's say the Titans swap with the Jets. Jets move up to number 6. Or no, Jets move up to number 2, and they grab Mariota. Titans are sitting there at 6, and Kevin White is sitting on the board. That would be a terrible pick, because Zach Mettenberger is just going to overthrow him on every single pass. But, right here, this mock draft saying Kevin White to the Bears, that would be a pretty good pick. As much as Jay Cutler drives me nuts, and I'm not a fan of his, he still is a talented quarterback who just has never lived up to his potential. And he can hit him on the, he can hit him, and he can make him look better than he is. Look at Sammy Watkins last year. He had some injury issues, obviously, but how far are you going to go with Kyle Orton and EJ Manuel as your quarterbacks? If you put him with, look at what Ben Roethlisberger does with his wide receivers. Put him in a position to succeed, and they will succeed. But I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I think a lot of these guys, that's the issue with going to the top half of the draft. You have high expectations, and you don't usually get surrounded with talent. Now, I do think the Jets are interesting because they have the most talent out of any of these teams in the top 10. Them and the Giants, and the Falcons to a lesser extent. I think those are your teams where any of the players they draft, they could be in a position to succeed because they're going to be surrounded by a lot of talented people. Especially if the Jets took a defensive player, that defense would be scary. Because they would be able to thrive. Because they would come in and only have to be the 5th best defensive player on that defense, and it'd be a success for a rookie season. So, I do think that there's a lot of bust potential in this draft, because it seems like a lot of these players, and I don't know, maybe this is going to be a trend, but a lot of these guys are sort of coming out of systems now, because that's how the college game is being played. There's a lot of systems here. You don't see a lot of pro-style offenses anymore. You're seeing a lot of the spread. You have Jameis Winston, and then you have a bunch of spread quarterbacks who everyone is trying to figure out what the hell to do with them and where they project. So, this is going to be an interesting draft. But again, what I'm looking forward to is the offseason was so out of control. Starting with that trade between the Bills and the Eagles, it just set the tone. Now you have people moving everywhere. You've got starting quarterbacks flying all around. Big-name players being traded. More big-name players on the block. This draft could be insane. You could see all 5, after Tampa Bay, the next 4 picks all getting traded in one way or another. It is that kind of draft where nothing would shock me at this point. Again, Tom Brady to Tennessee for number 2 overall. I would not be shocked. At this point, I would not be shocked. By the way, I know you know what you're doing, guys. I would not advise you trading Tom Brady and taking a chance at Marcus Mariota. Just saying. But, with all of that said, thank you guys so much for listening. That will end it for this podcast. Again, I will be back next week. Maybe even as soon as Sunday, depending on how everything shakes out, with my draft recap podcast. Again, the live podcast, or the live blog of the NFL draft, at least the first 3 rounds. I don't know if I'm going to do rounds 4 through 7, because I'm not going to know a lot of these players. It depends on who's left on the board, but that probably won't be as active. But the first 64 picks, I will probably have instant reactions to every single pick, whether or not I think it's going to be bust potential, whether I think it's a good fit, and whether or not I think they reached. That will be up on illegalshiftnfl.com. There will be a Tumblr post, again, like I said. By the time you guys are listening to this, there will be a blog post up already as sort of your primer for what to expect, and with a link to the Tumblr. But again, and check out illegalshiftnfl.com, the home of Illegal Shift, where I've already posted, I've got my mock draft, which is, again, it's for comedy, folks. It's a satirical mock draft, because how many serious mock drafts have you guys seen already? Do you need me to regurgitate the same picks over and over again, or would you rather see the Jacksonville Jaguars take a soccer player? I think that's more interesting. So there's that up, and also before that, I have my proposal for an NFL realignment to sort of try and solve this playoff thing if you're still adamant on needing to have conferences matter. And spoiler alert, there's only 4 divisions left in the NFL by the time I'm done with it. And conferences are getting completely realigned. So it's an interesting piece, and I think you guys will enjoy it. I think you guys will enjoy my mock draft as well, and hopefully if you guys keep checking back to Illegal Shift, you have more posts, more whatever I end up putting there that you guys will enjoy, and more importantly, I hope you guys have enjoyed this podcast. So, please be sure, answer the question of the day. Answer any of these burning questions, what you think will happen, where you think players will go, and if you have any sort of dark horse that you think could really help a team that he might not be a top 10 guy, but, end of the first round, second, third, fourth round, whatever he may be, that you think people are sort of sleeping on a bit and don't think he's going to be as high impact as maybe he will be. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys in a few days after the draft ends, and hopefully we have our fill of shenanigans.